Here's the full script translated into natural, clear, and engaging English that's perfect for voiceover narration. It flows smoothly, sounds conversational yet dramatic where needed, and keeps the original tone and meaning intact. Think you know 1960s London? Think again. It was a city where music, fashion, and freedom collided with danger, scandal, and shocking secrets. Legends were born here, but behind the glamour and psychedelic prints lay a dark side that people still rarely talk about. You'll see how the Beatles and the Rolling Stones didn't just take over the world, they shattered stereotypes and sometimes shattered lives. You'll discover how daring young women and rockers invented bold new looks that horrified the older generation and put themselves in real danger. And that's only the beginning. We'll take you behind the scenes of swinging London to the events many would rather forget, yet they defined an entire generation and changed the world forever. Stay with us. You're about to uncover the hidden stories of Carnaby Street, the scandals that destroyed careers, and how a generation of young people fearlessly tore up the rulebook. Most importantly, you'll see how the raw energy of 1960s London shaped the modern world we live in today. Don't change the channel. What's coming next are stories you've probably never heard, and some that might shock you. The 1960s were a decade of global upheaval, and London sat right at the heart of a cultural revolution. The city earned the nickname Swinging London, from the word swing, meaning to rock, to shake things up. And that's exactly what happened. Britain shook the world. Music, fashion, art, and youth culture born on London's streets swept across the planet, creating a whole new way of living and looking. People even coined the term British invasion to describe how British bands and style took America and the rest of the world by storm. Music became the soundtrack of social change. The arrival of the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, the Zombies, and many others sparked a revolution. These artists didn't just entertain, they smashed old stereotypes and wrote a new cultural code for young people everywhere. British musicians set the trends and the attitude. Their songs screamed freedom, raw emotion, and a hunger to turn the old order upside down. The British invasion had a massive ripple effect. Musicians in America and Europe started copying the sound and the look, sparking new genres and a huge cultural exchange. But music was only part of the story. London also became the epicenter of a fashion revolution. The 1960s brought bold, bright, experimental clothes that broke every rule. Young people stopped dressing to fit in and started dressing to stand out. Miniskirts, culottes, psychedelic prints, neon colors. Clothes stopped being about status or practicality and became pure self-expression, a badge of belonging to a new generation. Hairstyles and makeup got the same treatment. Girls rocked false lashes and played with wild hair lengths and shapes. Guys grew their hair long, lived in jeans and loose shirts, and loaded up on colorful accessories. The look said one thing loud and clear: we're done with stuffy rules and we're ready for something new. London's streets turned into a non-stop catwalk. Anyone could be a style icon, and designers finally started listening to kids on the street instead of just rich clients. The social backdrop mattered just as much. After World War II, the baby boom gave the world a huge generation of young people who grew up in relative peace and prosperity. By the 1960s, these freedom kids were old enough to demand change in music, fashion, politics, sex, everything. London's youth led the charge, fighting for the right to be themselves, to love openly and to live differently. Style in the 60s went way beyond clothes. Psychedelic patterns, crazy prints, screaming neon, clashing colors, they all became symbols of the era. Young people used fashion as protest and identity. For the first time, designers followed the street instead of the other way around. Mass fashion broke free from the elite, and young people themselves decided what was cool. Music, fashion, and youth culture fed into bigger social shifts. New art movements, films, photography, and teen magazines exploded onto the scene. London turned into a magnet for artists, designers, photographers, and musicians from around the globe. Clubs, cafes, and streets became living laboratories where tomorrow's trends were invented, then exported to Europe, America, and beyond. The 1960s were an explosion of freedom. A post-war generation that had never known rationing or air raid sirens wanted life bright, loud, and unapologetic. London's young people set the pace for cultural and social change that influenced fashion, music, lifestyle, even politics. This was the decade that launched the modern age, where being yourself mattered more than following the rules. Swinging London proves what happens when young people get the freedom to create. Music, style, courage, and pure energy came together to form a cultural phenomenon unlike anything before or since. London became the global symbol of boldness, freedom, and forward motion. The 1960s showed that a new generation doesn't just inherit the world, it can remake it from scratch, and the ideas and values born then still pulse through today's music, fashion, and culture. The era of swinging London remains one of the most important chapters in 20th century cultural history. It was a time when the boundaries of art, music, fashion, and social rules were pushed so far that a whole generation built a world completely different from their parents. London was the beating heart of that revolution, a symbol of freedom, experiment, and the burning need to be heard. The city's young people didn't just follow trends, they invented them, then watched those trends conquer the planet. British music gave a voice to an entire generation, broke stereotypes, created new genres, and shifted the mood of societies worldwide. The British invasion reached far beyond the UK, inspiring young people everywhere to demand their own freedom and self-expression. Fashion was just as revolutionary. London's streets became the real runway. Anyone could express who they were through clothes, hair, and accessories. Miniskirts, culottes, psychedelic prints, neon colors, wild patterns, fearless combinations. Every choice shouted freedom, defiance, and the search for identity. Designers finally started creating for real young people instead of just the wealthy elite, triggering a democratic takeover of the fashion industry. These changes went deeper than clothes or concert stages. They reflected massive social shifts. A post-war, baby boom generation had more freedom than their parents ever did, and they used it to build a society that prized individuality and personal liberty above tradition. London drew creative talent like a magnet, turning the whole city into a laboratory of new ideas. Clubs, cafes, and streets gave birth to cultural movements, subcultures, and new ways of seeing the world. In the end, Swinging London shows the incredible power of youth given room to breathe. Music, style, social courage, and a hunger for experiment built a new cultural blueprint that shaped global culture for decades. The 1960s proved that young people don't just accept the world, they can transform it, inventing fresh forms of art, fashion, and life itself. Today, we still feel the influence in our music, our designs, our fashion, and in that same spirit of freedom that lit up London streets all those years ago. Swinging London became the ultimate symbol of change, living proof that culture is a living thing, created and kept alive by generations bold enough to dream, experiment, and push forward.